My friends, let us begin with a simple acknowledgement. The world you are living in today is noisier, faster, and more demanding than any previous age. You are surrounded by constant movement, constant information, constant pressure to solve, to improve, to achieve. And yet, for all this striving, for all this running from one solution to another, the human heart has not found peace. It trembles in the very same way it trembled 2,000 years ago. Fear may take new forms, but the root of fear has not changed. Anxiety wears new clothing, but its substance remains the same. Spiritual panic, this condition so many live in today, is not born of the world outside. It is born of forgetting. Forgetting what? Forgetting the kingdom, forgetting the source, forgetting the presence that goes before you, the presence that walks with you, the presence that is your very being. When this presence is forgotten, when the kingdom within is overshadowed by the demands of the outer world, the soul cries out in distress. It feels unanchored, unprotected, unsupported, and so the human mind races after solutions, believing that peace lies in rearranging the pieces of the outer picture. But you see, this is the great illusion. This is the modern deception. People believe that anxiety is caused by circumstances, that peace will come when the body is healed, when the bank account improves, when relationships stabilize. They imagine that if only the outer picture were different, the inner life would be at rest. And in this belief, they chase peace where peace cannot be found. They approach life backwards. They seek solutions in matter instead of in consciousness. They seek remedies in effect instead of in cause. This is why the world is exhausted. This is why your prayers feel powerless. Your meditations feel shallow. Your effort feels unending. You have been trying to bring harmony to the branches of the tree while ignoring the root. You have tried to calm the waves while forgetting the ocean. You have sought to fix the picture while ignoring the light that forms it. When Jesus said, "Seek first the kingdom of God," he was giving you not a command, not a moral instruction, but a spiritual law, a law older than Scripture, older than humanity, older than time itself. He was revealing the order of life, the inner first, the outer second, the invisible before the visible, consciousness before form. You may ignore this law, but you cannot escape it. The same way you may deny gravity, yet still fall when you step off a cliff. So today, let us look gently, honestly, at the modern illusion that is ruling so many lives, the illusion that anxiety comes from circumstances and that peace must be created by manipulating those circumstances. I tell you this, not as theory, not as belief, but as lived truth. Anxiety is born the moment you give your power to something outside yourself. Anxiety begins the instant you forget that the kingdom is within. The outer world has no power to disturb you. The outer world has no authority over your peace. The outer world cannot touch the essence of your being unless you allow it by making it your God. When you look to matter as cause, fear will follow you. When you look to consciousness as cause, peace will accompany you. The modern world is not suffering from lack of resources, nor lack of opportunity, nor lack of information. It is suffering from lack of recognition of the divine presence that is closer than breath, nearer than heartbeat, the very substance of your consciousness. This forgetting, this simple turning away creates the illusion of separation, and separation always brings fear. But today, we begin a different path. We begin not with trying to fix the outer world, not with trying to change appearances, not with trying to rearrange the shadows on the wall. We begin where Jesus began. We begin where every mystic has always begun. We begin within. For the kingdom you are seeking, the peace you are seeking, the security you are seeking, the clarity you are seeking, they are not hidden from you. They are hidden only by your attention being placed on the wrong level of life. The moment the mind turns back to the source, the moment the heart remembers the presence, the illusion dissolves, not slowly, instantly. Fear fades the way darkness fades when a single light is lit. Anxiety loses its foundation when you recognize that the kingdom has never been outside your reach. It has been the ground of your being all along. This is the true beginning of spiritual freedom. The recognition that the inner world is not secondary, it is primary. That the outer world does not lead the inner, it follows it. And that anxiety is not a sign of failure, but simply the soul whispering, return to the kingdom, begin again where all power resides. And so we begin, my friends, if seek first the kingdom is the law, then we must understand what it means to seek second. For this is where nearly all human suffering begins, not in wrongdoing, not in lack of faith, but in ignorance of the order of life. And I say this gently, with compassion, for everyone has been conditioned this way. The world has taught you to seek second your entire life. Religion, education, society, they have all trained you to look outward first. More than this, most people do not even realize they are seeking second. They believe they are living spiritually because they pray, because they meditate, because they read scripture, because they engage in practices that appear holy. But spirituality is not measured by the activities of the mind. It is measured by the priority of consciousness. Not what you do with your hands or lips, but where your attention rests when life confronts you. You can pray daily and still seek second. You can meditate for an hour and still seek second. You can read every sacred text and still not understand the kingdom. Because the moment a problem appears, your attention rushes outward, your awareness leaps toward the circumstance, and in that instant, you have made the outer world your authority. Let me illustrate it simply. A bill arrives in the mail. Instantly, the heart tightens. The mind calculates, wonders, fears. This is seeking second. The problem is given power before the presence is acknowledged. A symptom appears in the body. The mind begins racing, searching the internet, imagining outcomes, calling this one and that one. This is seeking second. The appearance is given reality and consciousness before the kingdom is remembered. A conflict arises in relationship, emotion surges, words are formed, reactions erupt. This too is seeking second. The personal self attempts to handle the situation without remembering the presence that is the very life of both individuals. Seeking second means this. You look at the effect first, and you try to correct it with another effect, but effects cannot heal effects. Shadows cannot rearrange shadows. Waves cannot calm waves. Only the ocean can. Joel often said, you cannot change the outer picture by working with the outer picture. You must change the state of consciousness that formed it. And so the problem is not the bill, the symptom, or the conflict. The problem is forgetting the source. The moment the appearance arises, it is giving reality to what is only a projection of consciousness rather than returning to consciousness itself. Most people seek second not because they are unspiritual, but because they are deeply conditioned to believe, I must fix this. I must solve this. I must think my way out. I must act immediately. This is the human self taking the burden upon its finite shoulders. This is the ego believing it is responsible for maintaining the universe. And because the ego is small, it feels overwhelmed. It panics. It reacts. But the error is not the panic. It is the assumption that you are the one who must manage life. When you seek second, you forget that the kingdom, this living presence within you, is already governing, already supplying, already healing, already harmonizing every part of your experience. You forget that you are not the doer. You are the transparency through which divine intelligence acts. To seek second is to look at the canvas instead of the artist. It is to trust the shadow instead of the light. It is to believe that appearances have power independent of consciousness. Let us be clear. Seeking second is not a moral failure. It is a human reflex. It is simply the mind acting from habit rather than from recognition. And this is why our work is not to condemn ourselves, but to wake gently from the dream of self-sufficiency. The moment you see this tendency within yourself, the moment you recognize how often you look outward before you turn inward, you are already awakening. You are already beginning to seek first. Awareness of the pattern is the beginning of freedom from the pattern, and so we do not judge ourselves. We do not resist the old reflexes. We simply learn to pause, to breathe, to turn within, not to fix, not to force, not to manipulate, but to acknowledge that there is a presence, a wisdom, a love that is already functioning, already present, already complete. You see, the kingdom has no anxiety. The kingdom has no fear. The kingdom has no confusion. Seek first the kingdom, and you enter that atmosphere of certainty. Seek second, and you inherit the restless agitation of the world. This is why Jesus spoke the words. He was pointing to the correct order of life. And until this order is understood, the outer world will always feel overwhelming, because the foundation is in the wrong place. Let us now move deeper into the law that has been forgotten, not the law of effort, but the law of recognition. My friends, let us turn now to the heart of this teaching, the inner law. Jesus revealed a law so simple that the intellect overlooks it, so profound that religion has buried it beneath ceremony and belief. For centuries, humanity has repeated the words, "Seek first the kingdom of God." Yet few have understood what Jesus meant, and even fewer have lived from it. And so the kingdom has remained a beautiful idea, a distant hope, rather than the living reality it was meant to be. To understand this law, we must first recognize that Jesus was not a magician performing spiritual tricks, nor a prophet speaking for a distant deity. He was a realized soul, one who knew the nature of consciousness, one who understood that all reality begins within, flows from within, and is governed by the invisible presence that we call God. Jesus never taught a God who exists somewhere else. He never pointed you toward a heaven above the clouds or a kingdom reached after death. His entire message rested on one revelation. The kingdom is within you, within your own consciousness, within your own being, within the very awareness through which you hear these words. This is the law he lived by, demonstrated, and taught. It is the law that religion forgot, and the law Joel restored to spiritual understanding. Consciousness is cause. Form is effect. This is the foundation of all mystical truth. This is the principle behind every healing, every supply, every harmony Jesus demonstrated. You see, Jesus never sought to change outer conditions. He never treated the sick body, never manipulated matter, never tried to alter circumstances. Instead, he recognized the truth of being in the presence of discord, and that truth dissolved the appearance. He sought first the kingdom, first the inner realization of God as the only power, the only presence, the only life, and the outer world rearranged itself according to that recognition. When he stood before sickness, he did not see sickness. When he faced lack, he did not see lack. When confronted with fear, he did not accept fear. He sought first the presence of God, and then the appearance yielded. This is the law. The invisible governs the visible. The inner shapes the outer. The unseen is the cause. The seen is the effect. And yet, humanity has reversed the order. We chase the outer world, hoping to fix it, while ignoring the consciousness that produced it. We fight shadows, forgetting the light. And then we wonder why peace eludes us, why harmony feels temporary, why fear returns again and again. Religion has often taught people to seek God through behavior, through ritual, through obedience, as though the kingdom were a place earned through moral performance. But Jesus taught the opposite. He revealed that the kingdom is not a reward, it is a reality. It is not granted to the worthy, it is recognized by the awakened. God is not a distant ruler, but the life of your very being. This is why Jesus could say, with complete simplicity, I and the Father are one. He was not claiming special divinity. He was describing spiritual identity. He was revealing what is true of every soul, that our life is the life of God, that our consciousness is the instrument through which God expresses, and that harmony appears when we are aligned with this truth. Joel spent his life making this clear. He taught that the spiritual path is not about becoming something greater, but about recognizing what already is. The kingdom within does not need improvement. It needs recognition. And the moment it is recognized, the moment consciousness turns inward to acknowledge the presence, the law begins its work. Peace flows. Clarity appears. Supply unfolds. Healing reveals itself. There is no manipulation in this. No effort. No force. Only recognition. This is why Jesus said, seek first, not because there is virtue in putting God first, but because spiritual law requires that consciousness precede condition. When you know the truth at the center of your being, the outer world cannot contradict it for long. When the kingdom is acknowledged, the appearance must eventually conform to the nature of that kingdom. This is the simplicity that religion overlooked. This is the depth that theology could not grasp. And this is the law that ends, fear not, by changing the world, but by awakening you to the truth of your own divine identity. Let us now go deeper. To understand why anxiety appears when this law is forgotten. My friends, anxiety is not a punishment, nor a weakness, nor a sign that you have failed spiritually. Anxiety is simply what arises when we forget the truth of our being. It is the natural discomfort of a soul trying to find security in what has no capacity to offer it. You see, when consciousness is forgotten, when the kingdom within is not recognized as the foundation of our lives, we instinctively lean on the world of appearances, and appearances, no matter how promising, cannot sustain the weight of our trust. Let us understand this gently. Anxiety is not caused by circumstances. Anxiety is caused by misplaced authority. It is born the moment you give power to that which has no power. When a bill arrives and you believe that your supply is dependent upon a job, upon a paycheck, upon economic conditions, anxiety is inevitable because you have placed your security in the ever-changing. When a symptom appears in the body and you believe that your health is dependent solely upon matter functioning correctly, fear arises because you have placed your life in what is temporary. When a relationship trembles and you believe your peace depends on another person's behavior, the heart tightens because you have built your foundation upon shifting sand. This is the very nature of anxiety, the attempt to stand on what cannot support you. You see, the world of appearance is forever moving. Bodies change, bank accounts rise and fall, people come and go, circumstances evolve. When you anchor your sense of safety in these changing forms, the soul instinctively senses their instability, and so it trembles. It trembles not because danger is real, but because the foundation is false. Joel often said, "You are not afraid of the problem, you are afraid because you have forgotten the presence." This is the whole of it. The moment the kingdom is forgotten, fear appears. The moment the kingdom is remembered, fear dissolves, not slowly, instantly. Anxiety is the signal that attention has drifted outward. It is the soul's cry, saying, "Return to the source. You have wandered into shadows. Come home." And this is why anxiety is not your enemy. It is your reminder. It is the gentle pressure that pushes you back toward the kingdom. It is the very mechanism by which consciousness guides you into correct alignment. It is not here to harm you. It is here to awaken you. Think of it this way. When you place your trust in the finite, anxiety follows you. When you place your trust in the infinite, peace accompanies you. There is no mystery in this. It is law. The outer world fluctuates. The inner world is still. The outer world shifts. The inner world remains. The outer world appears. The inner world is. When you live from the inner world, the outer world loses its power to disturb you. This is why the mystics across every tradition have spoken of peace that passes understanding, peace that does not depend upon conditions, peace that remains even in the midst of storms. This peace is not emotional calm. It is not positive thinking. It is not the absence of challenge. It is the presence of the kingdom recognized within consciousness. It is the awareness of the one that never changes, the one that never fears, the one that never fails. When this presence is felt, even faintly, anxiety has no root, for anxiety depends on the belief that you are alone, separate, unsupported. The moment you recognize that you are not living life by your own power, that divine intelligence is the life of your life, the mind releases its frantic effort. It loosens its grip. It softens. And peace takes its rightful place. You may ask, but what about serious problems? What about pressing circumstances? My friends, the severity of the appearance does not determine the presence of fear. Your identification does. When you identify as the limited self, trying to control events, fear comes. When you identify as the transparency through which the infinite expresses, peace comes. Anxiety is nothing more than the soul trying to function as a little self. Peace is the soul remembering its oneness with God. Every moment of fear is a moment of forgetfulness. Every moment of peace is a moment of recognition. You do not fight fear. You do not conquer fear. You simply see it for what it is, a signal that attention has wandered from the kingdom. In that seeing, the path back becomes simple. Turn within, acknowledge the presence, rest in the truth of your being. let the kingdom reveal itself again. And so we learn that anxiety is not an obstacle on the spiritual path. It is the doorway through which we return to consciousness. It is the teacher reminding us that outer forms have no power and never have. Only the inner law governs, only the presence guides, and only the kingdom sustains. Let us now move deeper and see how to practice this law not through effort or technique, but through recognition. My friends, it is now time to understand the actual method of seeking first, for this is where many sincere souls stumble. They hear the word "seek first the kingdom" and immediately begin to strive, to work, to discipline themselves into holiness. They believe seeking first means doing something spiritual, praying harder, meditating longer, reciting sacred phrases, affirming truth with intensity. But all such effort still arises from the human sense of self. It is the personal mind attempting to grasp the infinite, and in that very effort, it loses the essence of the teaching. Seeking first is not effort. Seeking first is not struggle. Seeking first is not reaching outward or upward or away from yourself. Seeking first is recognition, a silent, inner acknowledgement of what already is. You see, the kingdom does not need to be created. It does not need to be summoned. It does not need to be awakened. It is already present, already complete, already functioning at the center of your being. To seek first is simply to turn attention away from the shifting forms of the outer world and rest it gently upon the presence within. Not to change something, not to get something, not to influence God, but to recognize God. This recognition is subtle. It is quiet. It is effortless. It is like turning the head slightly to notice the sunlight that was already shining. It is like remembering a truth you had not truly forgotten, only overlooked. Joel often practiced in this way. He would sit in silence, not asking for supply, not asking for healing, not asking for guidance. He would simply acknowledge, God is here. God is the life of my being. I and the Father are one. These words were not petitions. They were recognitions. They were not attempts to convince God. They were reminders to the mind. They pointed inward, toward the reality behind all appearance. Sometimes he used no words at all. Sometimes he closed his eyes and let the mind settle. Sometimes he rested in pure awareness, but always seeking first meant returning to the source, not in thought, but in consciousness. You do not seek first by trying to feel spiritual. You seek first by acknowledging that the infinite is already expressing as your very life. You do not seek first by trying to change your circumstances. You seek first by realizing that circumstances have no power apart from consciousness. You do not seek first by trying to overcome fear. You seek first by recognizing that the presence in you has never feared. This recognition does not require strength. It requires willingness. It requires quietness. It requires humility, the humility to stop trying to govern the world with your personal will and to let divine intelligence reveal itself as your guide. Think of it this way. Trying to seek first is a burden. Recognizing the kingdom is a release. Trying engages the ego. Recognition awakens the soul. Trying tightens. Recognition softens. Trying says, I must make it happen. Recognition says, it is already happening through me. And this is why Joel insisted that seeking first be practiced at the beginning of the day, before the phone, before the news, before the world has an opportunity to claim your attention. In those first moments of wakefulness, you are closest to your natural state of awareness. Even 60 seconds of recognition in the morning can establish a tone of inner peace that guides the rest of the day. You may close your eyes and simply rest in this understanding. There is a presence here. I do not need to reach for it. I do not need to persuade it. I need only recognize it. If thoughts of problems arise, do not resist them. Do not push them away. Do not argue with them. Simply return to the recognition of the kingdom within, quietly, gently, lovingly. This is what makes the practice powerful. It is not an attempt to correct the mind, but to redirect it. Not to fight the appearance, but to return to the source. Not to claim spiritual power, but to recognize that spiritual power is already present. In this space of recognition, divine order begins its work, not because you have forced it, but because you have gotten out of the way. The law operates the moment you acknowledge it. The kingdom flows the moment you stop interfering. Grace becomes visible the moment you cease trying to create harmony through personal effort. This is the infinite way, a life lived not from the mind, but from presence, not from fear, but from truth, not from effort, but from recognition. Let us now move deeper into what happens when you practice this, how the outer world responds when you stop manipulating it and begin acknowledging the inner reality. My friends, now we come to the great mystery of spiritual life, how outer conditions begin to change when you stop touching them, stop manipulating them, stop trying to force them into order. This is where the infinite way reveals its beauty. For it is not a path of willpower. It is not a path of personal mastery. It is not a path where you bend the world by positive thinking or mental imagery. It is a path where you step aside and allow divine order to reveal what was always true. You see, when you seek first, you return to the source. When you return to the source, the outer world naturally aligns with the nature of that source. This is demonstration not by human effort, but by spiritual law. Let us understand this clearly. Outer conditions shift not because you fought the problem, but because you withdrew reality from it. A problem exists only to the degree that you empower it. When you no longer give it the authority to disturb your peace, you no longer give it the substance of your belief, and what cannot draw upon belief cannot maintain form. Joel often used this simple phrase, treat nothing, recognize everything. Treat nothing means this: do not try to heal the body. Do not try to fix the finances. Do not try to mend the relationship. Do not try to rearrange the outer picture. Trying to fix appearances keeps you locked in the realm of appearance. It keeps you treating shadows instead of acknowledging the light. Recognize everything means this: acknowledge the presence behind the appearance. Acknowledge the perfection behind the form. Acknowledge the infinite supply behind the seeming lack. Acknowledge the wholeness behind the seeming sickness. Acknowledge the harmony behind the seeming discord. And when this recognition is sincere, even for a moment, the appearance begins to dissolve of its own accord. Why? Because recognition is alignment with truth, and truth, once acknowledged, corrects the false. Think of how a room filled with darkness changes when a single candle is lit. You do not fight the darkness. You do not push it away. You do not command it to leave. You simply bring in light and darkness disappears, not because you worked on the darkness, but because it never had substance of its own. The light reveals reality. So too with spiritual demonstration. When you recognize the kingdom, you bring light to the situation, and the darkness, fear, lack, sickness, disorder cannot remain because it had no power except the power your belief lent to it. Let me give you an example. A man once came to Joel in financial distress. His business was failing, debt was rising, his mind was consumed with panic. He begged for a solution, for a way out. Joel did not tell him to visualize success. He did not advise him to strategize or push harder. He simply said, "Sit with me and let us be still." And in the silence, Joel recognized the truth of being not about the man, not about his business, but about the nature of God as infinite supply. He rested in the awareness that supply is a state of consciousness, not a condition of the outer world. They sat together without struggle, without expectation, without fear, and within days, the situation shifted, not by the man's effort, but by grace. A new opportunity appeared, debt resolved, a path opened. The demonstration occurred because the false belief in lack was dissolved at its root in consciousness. This is not miracle. This is law. Similarly, a woman once came for healing. She had prayed for years. She had begged for relief. She had sought every remedy, and still the condition persisted. Joel did not fight the illness. He did not treat the body. He recognized the truth that divine life cannot be sick, that being itself is whole, that God cannot suffer, and so neither can the life that expresses God. As he recognized this truth silently, the woman felt a release, a peace beyond thought. And over days and weeks, the condition faded, not because it was battled, but because it was deprived of the belief that sustained it. You see, all demonstration follows this pattern. Withdraw power from the appearance, acknowledge the presence behind it. Let divine order reveal itself. There is no haste in this, no strain, no compulsion. Demonstration is not something you make happen. It is something you allow to happen. It is the natural unfolding of the kingdom through your consciousness. When you stop touching the outer world with fear, the outer world relaxes into the harmony of the inner world. When you stop trying to make life conform to your will, life aligns itself with divine intelligence. When you recognize the kingdom within, all these things are added, not earned, added, not achieved. This is grace. This is the infinite way. This is demonstration without manipulation. Let us now go deeper into how to return to the kingdom when fear arises, for this is essential in living this practice. My friends, let us now speak of the moment fear arises, for it surely will. Even the most dedicated student, even the most sincere seeker, finds that fear returns from time to time. Old patterns resurface. Old habits of thought reclaim attention. The human mind, conditioned for a lifetime to react to appearances, will occasionally forget the kingdom. In these moments, do not despair. Do not condemn yourself. Do not imagine you have fallen from grace. You cannot fall from what you are. Fear is not evidence of spiritual failure. Fear is the reminder that you have temporarily forgotten the presence, and so the work is simple: not to fight fear, not to analyze fear, not to overcome fear, but to return to the kingdom. Return with gentleness. Return with compassion. Return with the quiet understanding that fear has no reality apart from the attention you give it. When fear arises, the instinct of the personal self is to react. It wants to calculate, to plan, to defend, to fix, to act immediately. This is the old way seeking second. But you have learned now that the outer world has no power of its own, that the only power lies in consciousness. And so you pause, you interrupt the reflex, you create a moment of inward turning. Joel taught this simple truth. Your first response determines whether you seek first or seek second. When fear appears, your task is not to suppress the reaction, but to become aware of it, to say inwardly, ah, here is fear. Here is the old conditioning calling me back into the belief of separation. And then in that moment of awareness, you choose again. You turn within. And what does it mean to turn within? It means withdrawing your attention from the appearance just for a moment. It means taking the mind off the problem, not because the problem will solve itself through human effort, but because the problem was never the cause. It means shifting your gaze from effect back to cause, from the external picture back to the inner presence. You may close your eyes, you may breathe quietly, you may rest your awareness in silence, you may whisper to yourself, God is here, not to force belief, but to acknowledge reality. Turning within is not a dramatic act. It is a subtle reorientation of attention. You do not need to feel spiritual to return. You do not need to feel peaceful to return. You do not need to be calm to return. You return even when trembling. You return even when uncertain. You return even when the mind is noisy. For the kingdom is not a feeling. The kingdom is a fact. Peace is the effect of recognition, not its requirement. Clarity is the fruit of turning within, not its prerequisite. So you pause, you breathe, you remember the truth. There is only one presence, one power, one life, and it is here fear begins to soften. Not because you fought it, but because you refused to nourish it with belief. You did not feed it with your attention. You did not give it the authority it demanded in the presence of the kingdom. Fear cannot maintain form. Joel taught that the moment you return to recognition, even for a few seconds, the atmosphere of consciousness changes, the tone of being changes, the burden lifts, and the problem, whatever form it takes, begins to dissolve from the inside out. You may not see the change immediately. You may not feel it, but the inner shift has occurred. And because consciousness is cause, the change is already underway. The outer world must follow the inner world, even if the process is unseen. Returning to the kingdom is like stepping out of a storm into a quiet room. The storm may continue outside, but you have entered stillness, and from stillness, clarity appears. And from clarity, guidance arises. And from guidance, action flows naturally, effortlessly, harmoniously. This is the meaning of be still and know, not be still and wait, not be still and hope, not be still and think. Be still and know the presence that fear tried to overshadow. And so every fear becomes an invitation. Every worry becomes a doorway. Every challenge becomes the reminder to seek first. There is no need for heroism on the spiritual path. There is only the quiet fidelity of returning again and again until returning becomes living and living becomes being. Let us now move into the next step, what it looks like to live daily life from this inner foundation instead of living by panic or reaction. My friends, spiritual realization is not meant only for meditation rooms, sacred retreats, or moments of crisis. The kingdom is not reserved for the quiet hours of dawn or the stillness of evening. The kingdom is the foundation of your entire existence. And so, the great work is learning to live your daily life from presence rather than from panic, from inner recognition rather than outer reaction. Most people divide their days in two. There is the time they spend seeking God, and the time they spend living life. There is the moment of prayer, and then there is the rush into activity. There is the practice of the presence, and then there is the forgetting of it. But this division is artificial. It is the result of believing that God is an experience rather than the essence of being. It is the belief that spirituality is an activity instead of an identity. And so the practice fades as quickly as the day begins, and the world regains its power. Joel taught that the goal is not to create spiritual moments, it is to live from a spiritual foundation, not to seek God occasionally, but to acknowledge God continually, not to escape the world for a few minutes of peace, but to carry peace into the world as the atmosphere of your consciousness. How do we do this? Not through effort, not through constant repetition of sacred words, not through forcing awareness, but through gentle remembering. You begin the day by recognizing the presence before the phone, before the news, before the world lays its demands upon you. This first moment establishes the tone. It anchors you in truth. It reminds the mind that there is a deeper reality behind every form you will encounter. Then, as you move through your day, you bring yourself back to this recognition not as a discipline, not as an obligation, but as a quiet returning, like noticing the breath, noticing sunlight, noticing the sense of being alive. When you speak with someone, you remember the same presence that animates me animates them. When a task appears, you remember, I do not act alone. Divine intelligence works through me. When a challenge arises, you remember, this is not a problem to solve, but an appearance through which to recognize the kingdom. When silence opens within you, you rest in it without trying to fill it with thought. These small moments of returning accumulate. They gradually transform consciousness. They shift your life from reaction to recognition. And soon you will notice something extraordinary. Panic no longer feels natural. Fear no longer feels automatic. Anxiety no longer feels justified. Your instinct begins to change. Instead of reaching outward for solutions, you turn inward for alignment. Instead of rushing to fix the appearance, you pause and recognize the presence behind it. This is the beginning of spiritual maturity, not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of inner disturbance. The world may bring you situations, but they no longer command your center. The mind may attempt to panic, but the heart knows where to return. The body may feel tension, but the soul rests in the certainty that all things unfold from the kingdom. Joel called this the Christ-conscious life, not because it is religious, but because it is unified. The inner and outer are no longer divided. The sacred and the ordinary are no longer separate. God is no longer an experience, but the atmosphere of being. Living from presence means this. You walk through life anchored in an inner stillness that cannot be shaken by appearances. You respond instead of react. You listen instead of rushing. You allow instead of forcing. You trust instead of fearing. And this trust is not naive. It is not the hope of a child looking for rescue. It is the deep knowing that the same intelligence that keeps the stars in their courses also maintains your path. It is the recognition that the kingdom has never left you, and that every moment of the day is an opportunity to acknowledge it. In time, the practice becomes effortless. Recognition becomes natural. Presence becomes your home. And this is the true meaning of seeking first, not an activity performed at appointed hours, but a state of consciousness that colors your entire life. Let us now move toward the closing of this journey and explore how seeking first becomes not only a practice, not only a lifestyle, but a way of being that harmonizes the whole of life. My friends, as we come to the close of this journey, let us return once more to the simplicity with which we began. The world you see around you with its pressures, its uncertainty, its noise has not changed. It continues its rhythm, its demands, its illusions. But something within you has begun to shift. Something deep, something quiet, something real. You have discovered that the kingdom is not a place, not a reward, not a distant promise. It is the foundation of your being. It is the presence that has never left you, the life that animates you, the intelligence that guides you, the love that sustains you. It is the changeless reality behind every changing appearance. This recognition is the quiet revolution. It does not shout. It does not struggle. It does not announce itself with dramatic emotion. It comes gently, like dawn breaking over the horizon, softly, silently, inevitably. You see, the transformation does not begin when circumstances improve. It begins when consciousness awakens. It begins when the soul remembers. It begins when you stop seeking God as though God were separate from you and begin recognizing God as the life you are living. Every practice we have spoken of, seeking first, turning within, recognizing presence, living from the inner foundation, these are not spiritual techniques. They are the natural movements of a consciousness awakening to its true identity. You do not need to master them. You do not need to perfect them. You need only begin. Begin gently. Begin sincerely. Begin now. For every moment of recognition, however brief, is a seed, and the kingdom grows from these seeds. It grows quietly beneath the surface of thought, until one day you notice that fear no longer governs you, that anxiety no longer defines you, that outer conditions no longer command your peace. You notice that life begins to unfold with a grace you did not earn. Opportunities arrive without strain. Solutions appear without force. Relationships soften. The body relaxes. Circumstances align in subtle ways you could not have orchestrated from the limited mind. And you begin to understand what Jesus meant when he said, "All these things shall be added unto you," not because you sought them, not because you worked for them, not because you persuaded God to give them, but because the kingdom you recognized within expressed itself as harmony without. This is the quiet revolution. The outer world changes because the inner world changed. Life reorganizes itself around your new consciousness, not through effort, but through being. My friends, do not wait for the world to become peaceful before you acknowledge the kingdom. Acknowledge the kingdom, and you will find peace even in the midst of the world. Do not wait for circumstances to calm before you turn within. Turn within, and circumstances will find their rightful place. Do not wait for clarity to seek the presence. Seek the presence, and clarity will arise. This path is not the path of the strong or the gifted. It is the path of the willing. Anyone who can pause, anyone who can breathe, anyone who can acknowledge the truth, even for 1 second, can live this life. And so I leave you with this gentle realization. You are not seeking the kingdom, you are remembering it. You are not trying to find God. You are recognizing the presence that has never left you. You are not attempting to make life spiritual. You are awakening to the fact that life is spiritual, always has been, always will be. Let this recognition settle into your heart. Let it guide your day. Let it shape your responses. Let it soften your fears. Let it call you home again and again until the sense of separation dissolves and only presence remains. For this is the infinite way. This is the teaching of Jesus when rightly understood. This is the forgotten law that ends anxiety. This is the transformation that begins within and radiates outward to bless every corner of your life. And now, my friends, rest in the kingdom. Rest in the awareness that is reading these words. Rest in the truth that nothing is missing, nothing is broken, nothing is lacking in the presence that is you. Peace is already here.